I was watching the news this morning and they were talking about Vester Flanagan. And in their reports, they were saying that Vester Flanagan was hostile and difficult to work with in many of the jobs that he had. Now, I can relate to these statements because I've had them said about myself on jobs, and I can also, give you some insight into why people try to say these things about black men. Oftentimes, when a black man like myself is on the job, a lot of people want to project ideas about us from their own, limited experiences, and they want to say that we're being hostile and we're being angry, and it's them projecting. And I have run into this not just from white people, but from black people as well. I remember having a job back in 2000 when I was doing as part of the AmeriCorps Vista program at Strive, and I ran into this with one of these little light-skinned guys. He had his little master's degree in social work, and he thought he was better than everybody else, and he did not really like me. So he started, doing little passive aggressive things um, to try to sabotage me. And one of the thing, and then like he was trying to like he had asked me one time to give him a draft of a directory that I was supposed to be writing, and he loses it, and then he asks for it again, and and then things just they escalated, and he just says, one day he's having a conversation about how I'm being sarcastic and snappy, and really these were like code words for you're an angry black man. And then people, they just wanted to say that they had issues with me, and I'm just here a guy coming in, trying to do his work, trying to take care of business. And some people saw me as a guy, he's coming in, he's taking care of business, but these guys, because you're not part of the same social circle, they try to make efforts, to try to push you out because they feel uncomfortable with the idea of another type of black man. Now, mind you, this is a place where there are a lot of ex offenders working, a lot of former drug addicts, a lot of former homeless people. And all these people, they could get along with me. A lot of these people could get along with me. We were cool. But this guy, he's one of these elite Negroes, little elite light skinned Negroes with a degree. So he feels uncomfortable with the idea of another black man who is all equally educated but does not share the same social values. Now, later in the year, they were talking about another guy who was another one of these elite Negroes. You know, he had he was talking. They were talking about giving me a full time job there, but then I was supposed to meet with this vice president of the company at the time, and I ran into the same elitism again. He's talking when I went to have this lunch with this guy. He's talking about he has no place for me in his organization. So I have run in, you know, to this as well. And it's like they want to come at you with these negative statements, but you're not, there's nothing negative there. The whole thing is that these people are uncomfortable with the idea of a black man being a certain way, and it does not fit their narrative or the stereotypes that they perceive, regarding black men. And that makes a lot of these people, not just white but black as well, uncomfortable. In the second place, I ran into this um, was a law firm job I finally got in 2002. Um, I was I was supposed to be an office manager there, but when I went to interview, they were talking about hiring someone else. Now back then when I was younger, that wouldn't have registered as a red flag. You're talking about hiring somebody else during an interview. That already showed me, these people aren't interested. But they called me back about 90 days later, offering me another job as a receptionist. And because I was like short on cash at the time, I had to wind up taking that job. And it was one of the worst decisions I ever made because I was trying my best, to learn this job. And on this job, I had this black female coworker, and she decides, I'm not going to show you anything. I'm not going to show you anything. I'm not going to train you on anything. Same thing with this white male I was working with. He decides, I'm not going to show you anything. They're both being really passive aggressive, and I'm asking them for work, and you know, they decide I'm not going to show you anything because we just don't like you. And one day there's this foreigner who calls up on the phone, and I'm trying to get their information. I'm trying to, work with them, and I finally patched them through. And then after they finish their call, I get called into the office, and they're talking about, well, you were being really hostile to this person. I wasn't being hostile to the person. I was trying to get their information, but this was the projection they had put on me, that I'm this angry black man. And, I'm not trying to be the angry black man. What I'm trying to do is trying to get this information down. And they was like, "Oh, you're being hostile. You need to be more mindful of how you speak to people." I'm like, "How can I speak to people? I'm being pleasant with you. I'm being pleasant with this person." And it was a situation that was deteriorating. And if I had to go back in time, I would have just walked away from that job. But I was trying to hang in there because, you know, just trying to hang in there because, I don't like. It's hard for me to get jobs as it is with social anxiety, and I was trying to make this reception job work, but things just kept deteriorating and it got worse and worse. And eventually, you know, I wound up getting fired from this job, because these guys thought I was just being angry. And the whole thing is that when you're in a work environment, what happens is like this one. A lot of times, especially when you're a black man, you wind up dealing with people who are really being passive aggressive, and they want to play little games with you. And what happens is, because you're not aware of the games that they're playing, you wind up reacting to them instead of responding to them. And this is what had happened to me back in 2002, because I was really inexperienced at the time in dealing with people in social situations. Now, I dealt with one type of situation to strive with this guy, and thank God he just left. Um, and dealing with those black elites. But dealing with this white guy and this black woman, it was a different thing, you know. And I wasn't aware of the passive aggressiveness that people do. Now they'll say, you know, you're not doing anything, or you're this hostile black man. It was like a whole lot of stuff. Like, how can I do anything if I've not been trained on anything? And how am I hostile if I'm trying to get this information, and I have three other calls on the line. It's a job, and I'm not being trained on it. And these are the things that people were trying to say. That, oh, you're a hostile black man, you're an angry black man, you're not doing your job well. Oftentimes, when you're in a work environment, you wind up having to deal with people who, they don't want to support you because, one, they want the job for somebody else, like their cousin or a family member or a friend, and two, they don't like you because some of these people, they either have racial reasons or they have class reasons if they're black, because you don't come from their same social circle or their same culture. They decide, you know what, we don't really want this guy in the job. And this is something I ran into at Strive in 2000, because I didn't come from the street social circle or the ghetto social circle that most people came from, because I was raised, I lived in the South Bronx. I lived in poverty, but, I grew up in a really conservative home, a really strict home, and my values were completely different. So some people had issues with me, like these elites, and some of the more, really, really ghetto folks had issues with me. And then in the law firm job, these people had issues with me because, you know, they wanted to project these hostile black man stereotype on me, because they were not used to this, to me being, this type of black man. But I didn't see the red flags with that law firm job in 2002, because I'm sitting there in an interview and you're sitting there talking about hiring someone else for the job that I'm interviewing for. And I should have just, now that I'm older, I can see, if I see somebody talking like that, I'm just going to get up and walk out, because you're not just showing me any respect from a professional standpoint, and two, you're just being nasty, because it gives me a snapshot of what your corporate culture will be like if you're going to sit here and talk about hiring somebody else when I'm in an interview with you. It really shows me, you know, how you have no regard for anyone, and how if we were in a professional situation, you would have no regard for me, in that type of situation. And this is something, that I had ran into in those two jobs. Now, a lot of people, they think, and I ran into it also. Let me just clear my thoughts from it. I also ran into it on this third job at City University of New York, City College of New York. I ran into the same, thing towards the end. Now, these people had no problem with me from April to about September 11th, and then, first performance evaluation comes in, and I'm sitting there with this professor, and he's sitting there telling me that he's looking for somebody with a sales and customer service background. And I'm sitting here and I've been doing this job for 6 months or so. And, he sits there and talks about he wants somebody with a sales and customer service background. Now, again, I didn't see the red flags, regarding how this guy, really felt about me. I didn't see the red flags. I mean, for you to sit there and talk about how you want to hire somebody else when I'm sitting here and I've been doing the job for 6 months, that's some really greasy talk. And you'll sit there and then after this, then start, trying to pile up the work because we had a whole bunch of books that I didn't even know about that weren't even put into the system. They wanted me to put all these books in the system. You know, they were like 6 or 7 straight shelves, and I was trying to put them in the system and, serve customers at the same time. And I didn't see, again, the passive aggressive behaviors that they were doing to try to get you out. Because this is something that that people try to do, with African American men. They try to say that you're incompetent. They try to say you're unprofessional, and in reality, a lot of times, because you don't really have anybody there to help you or support you, you don't see that these are just tactics that people use to try to get you out of a job or try to get you fired. And and then it just escalates. When I was working at City College, when they saw that the books didn't work, that's when they came with the accusation of sleeping on the job, and they used that to get me out. Um, People people do all sorts of stuff, to African American men on a job, and then they'll say that and then they'll say you're angry or you're hostile or you have an attitude. And this is what they tried to do with me at City College with the performance evaluation, the second one they gave me on October 24th, after giving me the first one on September 11th, which was middling. Um, and then they tried to put a write up in the middle. And he really wanted to try to do this write up because he really wanted to just get me out of the job. Um, these tactics that people use, they try to say that you're an angry black man. He had negative performance appraisals. He had negative this, he had negative that, and it really wasn't that. It's that you can because you can put anything on paper, and then you can have people like your black women, like this pro-black female who I was working with, back them up because but it doesn't mean that it's the truth. In often cases, when it comes down to black men, they'll create these false scenarios and have it like this black man is this angry and aggressive and violent person when really that person was never angry, aggressive, or hostile at all. And if you look at the bigger picture of this person in their personal life or in other parts of their life, you'll see a completely different person. Usually, that's why I say, a lot of times in the cases of black men, they're just, reacting to the situation. And that's what any human being would do when you're put in a situation, when you're dealing with people who are, using passive aggressive tactics, talking greasy, using mind games. Because these are tactics that many people, not just white people use, but black people use in the workplace whenever they run into a black man and they want to get that black man, terminated from his job, and they don't really think about that black man. They just thinking, oh, he's not part of our social circle, so we want to eliminate him from the social circle because we don't like the values he represents, the ideas he represents, or who he is as a person. So they make efforts to try to eliminate that black man from the circle. And this is what I have run into, in these 3 jobs, in these 3 examples I have, mentioned. And it had nothing to do with work rate. It had nothing to do with skill, because people were talking at Strive. They were talking about how they were considering me for employment. But then I run into these 2 elitist black men, and one of them is the vice president. He decides I have no place for you. I go to this law firm, and I'm automatically a hostile black man, and I'm trying to do work with people, and they're telling me that there is no work, and they're doing all sorts of stuff, and then the boss calls me in and talks about, you're not doing anything. I'm like, I'm not trained to do anything. I'm not trying not to touch anything and mess it up, but, you're the hostile black man, you're the angry black man, and what happens is you wind up losing your job because sometimes you just get so frustrated that you wind up reacting instead of responding. And the whole thing is that people think you're supposed to have this, superhuman resolve, but every in many cases, when you're a guy, you're just trying to get through a day, and that's what a lot of these jobs, a lot of black men wind up doing. We're not. We want to do more. We want to be more social. We want to be more part of the business. But what happens is because we run into either racist white people or elitist black people, we wind up, withdrawing instead of, becoming more social, and that happens quite a bit, you know, because everybody's got us out to be this, menace or this threat, and they try to put these labels on us, talking about we're the angry black man, we're the aggressive black man, we're the violent black man. When this is not the case at all. A lot of cases, you wind up, falling back into survival mode because you're just trying to get through a day at this company where you feel like you're in a hostile environment. You're not the one that's hostile. You're really just reacting to the hostile and passive aggressive way people are treating you because you're getting it from all ends. I mean, you got some of these white people who are they're real nasty to you, and then and you have to try to work with them, and then you've got these black people who are, like these black women and these elite black men. They're trying to, be the H nice, and they want to try to devalue you so that you'll get pushed out of the social circle so they can go back to being, the top Negro in charge. And a lot of people, they think that your black man is, they'll start putting labels on you because you start reacting to things. Because a lot of these people, they play mind games. And a lot of times, if you're not aware of the mind games, if you're a young guy, because I was, 26 when I was working in a Strive, going on 27. And I was 29 when I worked at the law firm. And after I got fired from the law firm job, I fell into, this really, really bad depression, and I had really, really super bad social anxiety. And it was so bad at one point that, I was afraid to even use my own voice because the whole, comment about me being hostile over the phone, I even hated even talking on the phone. I wouldn't even talk to people on the phone. I just don't like, I got to a point where I didn't even like my own voice. That's how bad that, really affected me. I mean, because it really hurt for me to lose that, to get fired. I mean, it was the first time that ever happened to me in my life. And, it drove me into a deep, deep depression. And I got to the point where I didn't even want to I didn't even want to talk to people because of this. And, I didn't go and sue these people or anything like that because I just wanted to just let it go and leave it alone. And the same thing with this city college job. I mean, for me, I was coming in there on time. I was opening the place up. And, for 6 months, I'm doing work. I mean, I had gotten to the point where I was opening and closing on Fridays. And, the place was running smooth. And then this guy comes in and starts saying, oh, I'm looking for somebody with a sales and customer service background. He starts talking greasy. It really, these are the type of things that people do, to show their utter disrespect and contempt to you. And you're supposed to be, like this robot who just sits there and puts up with it. Now, everybody has resolve, and I mean, but there's just certain things you're not going to be able to take. And I can understand, what this Vester Flanagan went through because I've gone through it myself, on these three jobs with not just white people but black people as well. So I understand what this guy went through, and I understand, why he probably snapped because, this guy was 41 years old, and they said he was fired 2 years ago, so he was 39. And when in a business like the news, it gets harder and harder for you to find opportunities after you've been terminated from more than one job. Because I know this right now because I'm still looking for that next job to go work at. And as you get older, it becomes even more difficult to get work. And I'm sure that this guy, he's been sitting here, he's been unemployed for 2 years, you know, and it gets a lot harder because I know that from personal experience because, I went through from 2002 to 2008, out of work, went through a deep depression, um, and I was looking for work, nonstop after that. And it gets harder for you to find work. and then you finally get a job somewhere, and then you have to go and deal with the same people, you know, playing the same nonsense all over again. People who feel that you don't belong here, you shouldn't be here, and I'm gonna try to do things to push you out of the circle. You got black women trying to get you fired. You got white dudes telling you that, this job should be for somebody else. So a person that's a lot of pressure put on somebody, and they've just they just after being laid off, for a long period of time, they're coming back to the job market. They're already anxious because they want to do a good job for people. They want to leave a lasting impression on people. And then here come the people, with the mind games, with the head games, with the drama, and you wind up, it winds up overwhelming you because this is something that people, they think that they're pushing you out, when really pushing somebody's buttons, you don't know what combinations of buttons will lead to what type of reaction. And this is just a basic, human thing. This is why I say, I believe in the concept that God made, do unto others as you have them to do unto you. You wouldn't want somebody, to push your buttons or try to push you out of your job. So don't try to push somebody push their buttons and try to push them out of their job. And I wish more people would, apply that concept, because I feel, after you've lost a job or two, if you've been fired, you know, people don't understand what that is, or even, what type of feelings that you have to go through in losing that job, all the depression, all the anxiety that you go through. And they don't understand, how hard it is to bounce back. I think if people had to experience that for once in their life, they would think twice, before pushing somebody's buttons or trying to agitate somebody, or, trying to get something going with somebody, or trying to get somebody fired. Because if they had to, experience that themselves, like this guy had to experience, because I know firsthand how this is, because I've gone through even longer periods of unemployment, and I understand all that anger that this guy had, and I don't condone what he did, but I understand the emotions that this guy had regarding it. So I understood, why this guy, acted out in the way he acted out, and I don't condone it, but a lot of people like to call themselves, playing games and pushing buttons, and they don't understand, you know, that this person has a right to work too, and maybe because even though they're different from you and they have share different values from you, and they have different ideas about life from you, they still have a right to make a living. They still have a right to make money. They still have a right to take care of their family and their home. And you would, just like you wouldn't want your home to be disrupted, because you just have a different view of things. You shouldn't want to disrupt their home. I mean, this person was obviously hired because they met the qualifications for the job, and people have no right to to push somebody out of it. That's something that a lot of people, not only white but black, also need to understand, that people have a right to make a living. They have a right to take care of their families, and they have a right to take care of their home. They have a right to do those things. I mean, the reason why they're on this job is because somebody thought this person was qualified, and if this person is doing their job, you shouldn't really have an issue with them. But some people, they want to be the kingmakers on the job. They want to be able to say they make the persons who be there. They want to be It's just like junior high school. They want to be the one who says this person should be here, and that shouldn't be the case at all. I mean, I feel that, if the person is here and they're different, well, they're different. I mean, they have a right to be different. And sometimes differences can help make a workplace be a better place to be. I mean, sometimes those different ideas can give you a fresh perspective on things. But I look at this Vester Flanagan situation, I see what the media is trying to do. Now they're trying to say that he's an angry black man, that he was a hostile black man, that he was violent and out of control. And I can easily see, the subtle politics transpiring here. You want to malign this black man, and then you want to make these white people appear to be, almost angelic, when in a lot of cases it was they were equally guilty on both parts. Now you can't have an action without an equal and opposite reaction. And in this Vester Flanagan situation, I can clearly see, the equal and opposite reaction to the actions. Because a lot of people, they'll say that this black man is hostile, but not understanding that, a lot of these work environments are hostile themselves, and you're dealing with a lot of people who feel that, I'm going to try to push people out of this circle because I want to be, the top person. I want to be the bully. I want to play these little mind games, and they do these things, not understanding that you one of these days, like Harvey Superboy said in a video yesterday, you may run into the wrong person, and that person may react in a way you don't expect, and that's what happened, with this Vester Flanagan situation. He reacted in a way most people didn't expect. He wasn't, like myself, who would just say, I'm just going to get up and walk away from this company of dysfunctional idiots and, try to go do something else. This guy, he probably looked at his life and looked at his age and said to himself, you know, at 41, I'm not going to get another, not 41, but probably 39, 38. I'm not going to get another opportunity after I've lost, multiple jobs. And this guy probably reached a point where he was sitting at home and he was probably brooding and boiling because he had no support system and he had nobody to talk to, get some counseling or nothing about, losing a job. Because a lot of people, after you get fired, they just say, well, there was no support system for that. So the guy had no way of dealing with all these feelings that he had, regarding a job loss. So this guy reached a point where he felt he had nothing to lose, and then he decided, I got nothing to lose. So he probably decided, I'm going to go back to this job that he had 2 years ago, and get even with the people who did him wrong. I'm not justifying what he did, but I understand the psychological reasons, behind it. I understand the psychological reasons behind this man's behaviors, because I studied psychology, I've studied mental health, and a lot of people they don't see the stuff that they were doing. They don't see the game, how these people on these jobs play these games, these mind games, these head games, and they try to do things to push people out of the job. They try to push people out of social circles, and they have a real junior high school herd mentality. And this is what makes your work environment, really a problem. And I look at this whole Vester Flanagan situation. I look at it beyond race, and I see where the problem is not just race. It's also about people management learning. You have to nip things in the bud with coworkers. You have to do interventions, and you have to really understand that you have to provide real support especially for new hires when they come into your work environment. Because you have a lot of people who want to play these hostile little mind games. You have people who want to try to push people out because they're used to the workplace being a certain way. And this new person, they represent change, and a lot of people they have a hard time dealing with change, and so they try to push people out of the circle to prevent the change from coming, but not understanding that change is a part of life. And this is something a lot of people they don't understand, regarding the workplace. This is why they try to push black men out, because they feel a lot of times when a black man comes to the workplace that that represents serious change, especially when you see black men who don't fit the stereotype, don't fit the narrative of this stereotypes that they have projected in their minds for many years. This represents serious change for people, and it makes people very uncomfortable regarding black men. And I've run into this, 3 times in my life, and 7 years after I lost my job at the City College of New York, I'm still, trying to hang in there. I'm still trying to look for that next job. I mean, I know for a fact, I'm not getting any older, and I'm trying to find that break before I get too old, to work anywhere. And trying to find something before I get too old, because once you start, getting past, 35, a lot of times employers they start saying, oh, I don't want to hire that guy, he's too old, or they're afraid of taking risks, and that's a lot of pressure that comes down on you, especially when you're an older person and you've lost several jobs, and you're trying to find that way to bounce back, and it gets harder and harder to bounce back, especially if you're a black man and you're an older black man, and you have all these stripes against you, and you're still trying to get out of from under this. How do you explain all this to people? Um, and a lot of people, they really don't want to understand. And this is something I ran into. They don't want to understand. You were let go from this job, and they don't understand. The complexities. Regarding it, how you were. It looks like on the surface, oh, this guy was difficult, or this guy was, hostile, and it really wasn't that the guy was hostile. He was really reacting to a situation that he had, no understanding of, and he didn't understand people. A lot of us, we're not, psychology majors, so we don't understand, when people are being passive aggressive or being manipulative or being just completely dishonest, or they don't look at that part of the angle. They look at, oh, this guy's just an angry black man, and not understanding that there were mitigating factors that made that man react in the way that he did. Because when you're interacting with people, sometimes these people will do things just to push buttons. They'll start rumors to agitate. They will, try to manipulate situations to get you to react in a certain way. And when you react in a certain way, you know, you wind up, hurting yourself as a black man. And this is something that a lot of people, they don't think about. And then when you get fired, it's a really, really tough thing to deal with. I mean, you've been kicked out of a job, and then you have to try to find another job, and then you have to try to explain to the next employer, you know, how you lost that job, or in some cases, you just have to leave it off your record, and then wind up with a big gap on your resume. And you're trying to explain this gap on your resume, and you're trying to get that next opportunity, and a lot of people don't understand what goes into that. How hard it is to get opportunities as it is when you're a black man, because it's very hard to get, callbacks and stuff like that. Because I have sent out, over the last 7 years, at least about 100,000 resumes or so, and put in numerous applications. On some places, I've put in applications, 6, 7, 8 times, and still no response. And that really, all that pressure, really bears down on a person, and it makes them nervous. It makes them anxious because they don't know how they're going to make, you know, all the little bit of money that they've saved stretch until they can find that next job. And they're still trying, to find other ways to make a living for themselves until they can find a next full-time job. And you finally get into a work environment. You finally get somebody to finally get you to give you a call back. You finally get somebody to give you an interview, and you finally get an offer. After, in my case, 6, 7 years. So I still don't have one yet. But the last time I had it was 6 years before I got, that job at the city college. And then the first day you get there, you got guys saying that acting like they don't like you, acting stink, talking greasy, and you got people being passive aggressive, and people making efforts to try to get you out when you had to fight to get in. And this is something that goes over people's head. Because some of these people, they can get a job in a week or 2 weeks, and it's real easy for them. But they don't understand. For some of us brothers, it's very hard for us to get work. And the minute we get in, we got people trying to push us right back out, not understanding that don't I have a right to make a living? Don't I have a right? I passed the interview. I met the qualifications. Shouldn't I have an opportunity to come here and try to do work uninterrupted without people trying to sabotage me or trying to play mind games? I mean, it's a fight. A lot of people don't understand how much of a fight it is, for black men to get work. And then we come into a work environment that's, continuously hostile. People are extremely passive aggressive, and then they want to say that you're hostile and passive aggressive and difficult and all this stuff. When you're just reacting again to their hostility and their passive aggressiveness and their rudeness, and you're not like that at all. I mean, I remember when I was working at that library, at that front desk, most of those students had no problems with me. It was the management that had an issue with me. But the students, they came in, they got their stuff, They pretty much knew me, and we were cool. And that's some, and even some of the students that worked with me, we were cool. But some of these people, they get angry because they don't like dealing with change. They don't like the idea of dealing with black men. They don't like the idea of dealing with professional black men, and that makes them uncomfortable. And they'll put these labels on a black man, saying that he's an angry black man, he's a hostile black man, he's difficult to work with, and this is not the case at all. I mean, if people knew me, in other places like Monroe College, or they when I did a book signing there, I was the nicest guy that you could ever see. Or places, like the Harlem Book Fair. The few people I talked to, I was good with. Or people who knew me on Facebook, or people who know me, in my home. They'll say I'm the nicest guy you'll ever meet. But you run into this work environment, and then you run into certain people, and they will make a nice guy, very frustrated, and then they'll come at you with this, you're an angry black man, or you're a hostile black man. But really, it was the things that they did that made that person, you know, react in the way that they did. And even a person who has control over their emotions, you know, you're still going to react that way because you're responding to the way this person is towards you. And sometimes, I mean, I know how to deal with it a little bit better, but when you're dealing with a younger guy, then there's nobody there to sit down and talk to him about this stuff, because in a lot of cases, in when you get down to workplaces, you know older black men who are in the workplace, they're often very elitist. They're often very nasty towards people because they think, oh, I've arrived, so I'm special. So they don't want to take the time, sit down with a brother and talk to him, and let him know, you can't really react to certain things. Some of the, and because the whole thing is that, I look at this whole Vester Flanagan situation, you know, and I see a situation that, easily could have, those homicides could have been prevented if people, were more understanding of the issues black men run into the workplace, if they were more supportive of black men in the workplace, and if they understood that, the basic Christian concept of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you don't want a black man to, be angry, then don't do things. If you wouldn't want, well, I'm just gonna phrase it like this: if you wouldn't want somebody to push you out of your job, then don't try to push this guy out of his job. And everybody has a right to work, and everybody is on this job because they met the qualifications for the job. And you know what? This is not, a sorority house or a frat house or your house. This is a job. You're going to run into different types of people, and you're going to have to work with them, and work with their little personality quirks, and work with different people. That's part of being a professional. Is you know you learning how to work with different people and bring those people together. And I look at many of these workplaces, and they said, "Oh, he was a hostile man, or he's a difficult man." Well, that shows there was a problem in management, because if management knew about this situation and didn't try to get this guy some help, or they didn't try to provide a supportive environment for this guy, then they're just as culpable for those deaths as this Vester Flanagan, because they had every effort there to prevent this, and they didn't make any efforts to intervene. Because when you have the problem today with a lot of managers is that they'll pretend to be completely clueless, but they're also part of the passive aggressiveness, because a lot of these guys they don't like black men either, so they'll just sit there and go along and listen to the rumors and never get the side of that black man so they can understand what's really going on. I know this video is going long, but I really want to give people some insight to this issue, because management really messed up in this situation. Now they're sitting around about, oh, he's difficult and hard to work with, but you have to, as a manager, your job is solving problems, and your job is to find out what's going on here to make this guy difficult. Now he may be the new guy, and he may be going through some stuff, and this might be a quality worker, this might be a good worker, but they just need a little bit more support and a little bit more guidance, because they've been out of the workforce for a while, and they don't really understand how things work at this company. So, but people, they don't want to be that understanding about things. They just want the guy to be, you know, they want, especially when it comes on to black men, they want you to be this, absolutely perfect, nice person who, never gets angry, never has feelings, never, does anything. And that's what they want you to be, this absolutely perfect person who never feels, never hurts, never goes through pain. Basically, they want you to be a robot. And that's not what human beings are. Human beings have feelings. Human beings feel pain. Human beings hurt. And that's something that, people don't see, regarding black men. They don't see us in many cases as human beings just like they are. And they feel that they can just do all sorts of things to us, and we're just supposed to just take it like a robot. You know, that's not how it is. Even machines break down if you abuse them constantly. So that's something that people just they don't really understand, regarding black men. They want to come at you with this angry black man label, when in a lot of cases it's not that the guy was angry. Sometimes the guy is just, reacting to a situation. Sometimes they're just frustrated because, again, management is not giving them any support. Management's not giving them any guidance, or, management's just not doing what management needs to do. Um, but sometimes there's a lot more beyond the surface, and I'm doing this video so people can understand, the complexities, regarding, this whole Vester Flanagan situation. It goes, far beyond, angry, some disgruntled worker. Um, it's something that we really need to really look at, regarding this whole. We really need to take a hard look on how we treat each other, and how we are towards each other in the workplace. I mean, I'll say it again. Again, everybody has a right to work. If this guy is on a job, instead of trying to attack him or trying to find ways to get him out, you should be trying to find ways to keep him in, because, you know, just as you trying to get him out, somebody's trying to get you out, and nobody should be trying to get anybody out. Everybody should just be working together, because if everybody works together, maybe this company could go somewhere. But, people these days, they're very selfish, they're very narcissistic, and they don't think about, the next man. All they think about is, stepping over the next man so they can get into the next man's spot. And sadly, that's why, I believe that, we may see more events like this. And the sad part is, they could all be preventable if people, would just take a minute again to look at that Christian principle of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and they would show, your fellow man and woman, and just the least amount of respect. That's all I have to say for this video. And comment, rate, and subscribe.